Ladies and gentlemen, you ever wonder why the people who run from intimacy the fastest always seem to chase the same type of partner? Let's talk about avoidance. You know the type. Hot and cold, here one moment, vanish the next. The ones who crave connection, but the second it gets too real, they pull back, ghosting, deflecting, diving into work, or suddenly needing space. But here's the twist: despite all that, avoidants tend to zero in almost obsessively on one very specific kind of person. And no, it's not just random. It's pattern. It's emotional muscle memory. Avoidants are secretly drawn to emotionally available partners. The warm ones. The open ones. The ones who feel. And you're probably thinking, wait, if they're scared of closeness, why would they go after someone who wants connection? Because deep down, they crave exactly what they fear. Let that sink in. Avoidants are terrified of being overwhelmed, of losing themselves in love, of being seen. But when they meet someone who's grounded, empathetic, emotionally expressive, it touches something old, something buried. A part of them that never got to feel safe being close. That partner becomes a mirror of the love they wanted but never fully received. Not consistently anyway. So what happens? They get hooked. They fix it. And it's not just about attraction. It's psychological. This kind of partner represents healing and risk. It's intoxicating and terrifying at the same time. That's why they keep coming back. They orbit. They test boundaries. They ghost and reappear. Because their nervous system is doing a dance. Get close, but not too close. Here's the truth no one talks about. It's not that avoidants don't want love. It's that they've learned, usually through early life experiences, that love is dangerous or unpredictable, or that they have to earn it. So they armor up, but that armor has cracks. And when they meet someone warm and open, it slips through. So if you're that kind of partner, the one avoidants keep gravitating toward, hear me, it's not about fixing them. It's not your job to prove your love, to stay in the chaos, to decode mixed signals like it's a puzzle you can solve if you just try harder. No, your job is to recognize your worth, to set boundaries, to stay kind but not self-abandon. Because the right kind of connection doesn't require a rescue mission. It requires two people willing to heal, grow, and stay. And for the avoidants, there's hope. That fixation is a sign. It means something in you wants to change, to feel, to be seen. But the only way forward is through. You've got to stop ghosting yourself. Because at the end of the day, it's not just the partner you're afraid of. It's your own heart. And guess what? You're strong enough to face it. Avoidants crave what they fear most. It sounds contradictory, right? But that's the core of the avoidant attachment pattern. This constant internal tug of war between wanting closeness and being terrified of it. On the surface, avoidants seem like they don't want deep connection. They value independence, space, control. They keep people at arm's length. But dig a little deeper, and you'll see something else behind the emotional distancing. The mixed signals, the disappearing acts. There's a longing, a craving, a hunger for the very thing they push away. This isn't about being manipulative or playing games. It's about protection. Somewhere along the line, avoidants learned, often in childhood, that closeness isn't safe. Maybe love was conditional. Maybe they had to perform to be seen. Maybe they were constantly let down or emotionally neglected. So their nervous system built a strategy: don't depend on anyone. Don't get too close. Don't risk vulnerability. It worked as a survival tactic. It kept them from getting hurt. But now in adult relationships, that same strategy becomes a prison. Here's where it gets complicated. Even though avoidants act like they don't need anyone, they absolutely do. Just like every human being, we're wired for connection. No one escapes that. So deep down, avoidants want intimacy. They want someone who will stay, who will see them, who will love them exactly as they are. But the moment they get close to someone who feels emotionally safe, who is warm, open, and available, they start to panic. The alarm bells go off. The story kicks in. This is too much. I'm losing control. I'm going to get hurt again. That's when the distancing starts. They shut down. They find reasons to criticize or withdraw. They suddenly become too busy or not ready for anything serious. But it's not because they don't care. It's because they care more than they know how to handle. That internal conflict between craving connection and fearing it creates a loop that's hard to break. So what do? They obsess, they fix it. Not on just anyone, but on a specific type of partner, the emotionally available one. Why? Because that kind of person represents what the avoidant wants the most. Someone who's safe. Someone who won't leave. Someone who feels like home. That kind of partner triggers hope. But also fear. Hope that maybe this time it could be different. Fear that they'll get too close and lose themselves. It's both a magnet and a warning sign all in one. That's why avoidants can't let go. Even when they run, they still think about that person. Even when they ghost, they often come back because that emotional availability reminds them of what they never got to fully experience, true intimacy without fear. And the thing is, this pull isn't random. It's not weak. It's deeply human. When you've spent your life building walls, the person who walks in and sees you anyway, that person shakes your foundation. And for an avoidant, that's both terrifying and deeply attractive. They want it, but they don't know how to handle it yet. So, while avoidants may look like they don't care or don't want connection, the truth is the exact opposite. They're craving it. They just don't trust it yet. And that craving often shows up as fixation on someone who makes them feel safe enough to imagine a different story. One where closeness doesn't have to equal pain. One where love doesn't come with conditions. One where they can finally breathe, drop the armor, and let someone in. The attraction avoidants feel towards certain partners isn't just about chemistry or personality. It runs much deeper. It's psychological. It's rooted in their emotional blueprint, often formed in early life, where they learned how love works. Or more accurately, how love doesn't work in a predictable, safe way. That blueprint doesn't just disappear. It follows them into adulthood, quietly influencing who they're drawn to, who they obsess over, and why certain people leave an emotional mark that others don't. Avoidants tend to be pulled toward partners who are warm, nurturing, emotionally expressive. People who are able to stay grounded in their emotions and in the relationship, even when things get complicated. These partners offer something that's both unfamiliar and deeply needed: consistency. To an avoidant, that consistency can feel soothing and threatening at the same time. On one level, it feels good. It's a relief. On another level, it feels almost too good to be true. And because the avoidant brain has been wired to expect disappointment, chaos, or rejection, this safe emotional presence feels suspicious, unsettling, like there must be a catch. Still, the pull is strong. That kind of partner represents something the avoidant didn't receive enough of: steady emotional attunement. So what happens is this type of partner becomes a symbol of healing. Not consciously, of course. Most of this operates below the surface, but that partner touches a nerve. They reflect what was missing. They awaken an old longing that was buried under layers of self-protection. And when that longing is activated, it creates fixation. Not because the avoidant is being manipulative or selfish, but because their nervous system is trying to resolve unfinished emotional business from the past. The brain loves patterns, even dysfunctional ones. That's why people often repeat the same relational dynamics over and over again. But in the case of avoidants, the twist is that they don't just repeat unhealthy patterns. They sometimes reach for the opposite of what they're used to, hoping it will correct the past. That's what makes emotionally available partners so magnetic to them. They seem to offer a chance to rewrite the script. Maybe this time I'll be safe. Maybe this time I can get close without being hurt. But because the old wiring is still there, fear kicks in the moment that closeness feels real. That creates a painful cycle. The avoidant is drawn in, then retreats. They idealize the partner, then find fault. They want to be seen, but they fear being exposed. The emotionally available partner ends up holding the weight of that tension. Often confused, often trying to prove their worth, often caught in the pull without understanding what's actually going on underneath. But again, this isn't about games. It's about survival. The avoidant is operating from a deep place of emotional confusion, where love feels like both a lifeline and a threat. This psychological pull toward healing isn't unique to avoidants, but for them it shows up in a very specific way. Intense interest in someone they believe can offer the emotional safety they never had, but without the tools to receive it. So the partner becomes a kind of emotional mirror. And what's reflected back isn't just love. It's all the unfinished grief, the unmet needs, the memories of being emotionally alone. That's why the fixation happens. It's not really about the partner. It's about what the partner represents: the possibility of healing an old wound, the hope that love can feel different this time, the chance to finally trust and be trusted. Until that inner emotional work is done, though, the avoidant is stuck between desire and fear. They may chase that emotional safety from a distance, never quite able to stay, but unable to walk away. It's a cycle that won't break until the underlying pattern is seen and addressed, not just in the head, but in the heart. The internal experience of someone with avoidant tendencies is often like being caught in a relentless tug of war between two opposing forces: the desire to get close and the fear of being overwhelmed by that closeness. This push-pull dynamic isn't just a casual pattern. It's deeply wired into their nervous system. It shapes how they respond to intimacy, how they manage emotions, and ultimately how they behave in relationships. When an avoidant partner feels safe, seen, and connected, part of them relaxes and opens up. They experience a glimpse of the intimacy they secretly crave. But almost immediately, another part of their brain kicks in with alarm bells. This part is wired to protect them from perceived threats. Threats that, for an avoidant, often look like emotional vulnerability, dependence, or losing autonomy. It's a survival mechanism, born from early experiences where closeness may have meant pain, disappointment, or loss of control. Because of this, avoidants tend to oscillate between approaching intimacy and pulling away from it. One moment, they want to be near their partner, to feel the connection. The next, they need space, sometimes suddenly, without clear explanation. This oscillation isn't just confusing for their partners, it's exhausting. It can feel like emotional whiplash where the avoidant's feelings and behaviors shift rapidly and unpredictably. The avoidant themselves often feels torn, frustrated by their own contradictions but unsure how to break free. This push-pull pattern happens because the avoidant's nervous system is stuck in a loop of hypervigilance and withdrawal. When intimacy increases, their nervous system detects increased emotional intensity, which triggers stress responses. To calm down, they retreat, to regain a sense of control and safety. But distancing from their partner then brings feelings of loneliness, guilt, or regret, which pull them back in again. The cycle repeats endlessly. This is why avoidants are often labeled hot and cold, or inconsistent. They aren't intentionally trying to hurt their partner or sabotage the relationship. They're responding to an internal conflict that they don't always fully understand or know how to manage. Their behavior is a coping strategy, one that helped them survive early emotional hardships, but now causes relationship struggles. Understanding this push-pull dynamic also helps explain why avoidants are drawn to emotionally available partners. Those partners provide a steady anchor, someone who stays present even when the avoidant pulls away. The emotionally available partner's consistency becomes both a source of comfort and a trigger for the avoidant's fears. On the one hand, it's reassuring to know someone is there. On the other, it intensifies the avoidant's inner alarm, because it means they can no longer avoid being truly seen or vulnerable. For avoidants, this dance between closeness and distance creates intense internal stress. It's not just about feelings, it's about how their nervous system regulates safety. When that system feels out of balance, it demands action, get close or get away. But the right balance is hard to find because the avoidant brain often interprets emotional intimacy as a threat rather than a reward. This pattern can also lead avoidants to test boundaries repeatedly. They might push their partner away to see if they'll stay, or they might create distance to protect themselves from perceived threats. Sometimes, they use emotional withdrawal to regain control when they feel overwhelmed. These behaviors aren't about cruelty. They're survival tactics that have become automatic. Breaking free from this push-pull loop requires a deep shift in how the avoidance nervous system interprets safety and intimacy. It means learning to tolerate discomfort without retreating, to stay present even when vulnerability feels scary. This isn't easy. It takes time, patience, and often support from a partner or therapist. For those in relationships with avoidants, understanding this dynamic is crucial. It helps explain why avoidants seem inconsistent, why they might act distant one moment and affectionate the next, and why they sometimes disappear only to reappear later. It's not about lack of love, it's about an internal struggle to balance connection and autonomy. Ultimately, the push-pull pattern is a dance between fear and desire, between protection and longing. It reflects a nervous system caught between past pain and the hope for a new kind of love, one where closeness feels safe, steady, and sustaining. Until that nervous system learns a new rhythm, avoidants will keep dancing between getting close and pulling away, caught in a loop they didn't choose but must learn to understand and heal. When it comes to relationships with avoidant partners, one of the biggest misconceptions is the idea that emotionally available partners are supposed to be rescuers. That somehow, their role is to fix the avoidant, prove their love endlessly, or tolerate confusing mixed signals in hopes that the avoidant will eventually change. This belief can be incredibly damaging, not just to the emotionally available partner, but to the relationship as a whole, because it sets up an impossible expectation that love is about endurance rather than mutual respect and sacrifice rather than healthy boundaries. Being emotionally available doesn't mean accepting chaos or walking on eggshells to keep the avoidant from withdrawing. It doesn't mean giving up your own needs, values, or sense of self just to keep the peace. It's not about proving your worth over and over again to someone who's afraid to show up fully. When you fall into the trap of thinking you need to fix an avoidant, you start losing sight of your own worth and well-being. Avoidants often struggle with emotional closeness because they've developed survival strategies to protect themselves from vulnerability. But that doesn't mean they want or deserve to be treated like a problem to solve. They need a partner who respects their fears but also holds firm on what's acceptable in the relationship. The emotionally available partner's strength lies in their ability to set clear boundaries while staying compassionate. They show up consistently, not by chasing or rescuing, but by being steady, reliable, and true to themselves. When you try to fix an avoidant by tolerating mixed signals or by constantly proving your love, you risk losing your own emotional balance. You might find yourself exhausted, confused, or questioning your own value. That's a dangerous place because it opens the door to self-abandonment, putting the avoidant's needs or fears above your own sense of safety and dignity. And self-abandonment never builds a healthy connection. It builds resentment, confusion, and emotional burnout. True emotional availability means showing up fully while protecting your boundaries. It means loving someone without losing yourself in the process. It means recognizing that you cannot control or change another person's attachment style. You can only control how you respond. Being steady and emotionally open is powerful, but it's not a magic fix. It won't change someone who isn't ready or willing to do their own inner work. In fact, trying to fix someone else often pushes avoidance further away. It reinforces their fear of losing autonomy and being overwhelmed. It triggers their defense mechanisms. So the paradox is that the more you chase, the more you may push them to retreat. The healthiest relationships come from two people who are willing to meet each other where they are, with honesty, patience, and respect. For emotionally available partners, this means saying no. When something doesn't feel right, it means communicating clearly about your needs and not tolerating inconsistency that hurts you. It means understanding that love doesn't require sacrifice of your own well-being or sense of self. You are worthy of respect, consistency, and care, not because you have to earn it, but because it's your right. Avoidants often need to see that emotional availability isn't a trap or a weakness. It's strength. But that realization comes from experiencing a relationship where boundaries are clear, respect is mutual, and both people can show up authentically. That's the kind of connection that invites growth, healing, and real intimacy. So if you're someone who finds yourself trying to fix an avoidant partner, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, am I preserving my own boundaries? Am I loving myself through this process? Am I accepting the relationship as it is? Or am I hoping it will change because of my efforts? The answers to these questions matter. Because emotional availability isn't about fixing. It's about showing up fully, loving honestly, and knowing your worth. No matter what, fixation in avoidant relationships isn't just a quirk or a coincidence. It's a powerful signal. When avoidants become obsessed or fixated on an emotionally available partner, it's not simply about attraction or preference. It's a reflection of something much deeper going on inside them, something that points to a readiness for growth, healing, and change, even if they aren't consciously aware of it yet. For avoidants, fixation often feels confusing and frustrating. They might find themselves thinking about their partner constantly, even after pulling away. They might struggle to let go, despite recognizing that the relationship triggers anxiety or discomfort. This intense focus isn't random. It's a sign that something in their emotional world is activated. That emotionally available partner represents a doorway into a new way of relating, one that challenges their old patterns of avoidance and withdrawal. What's important to understand is that fixation isn't a solution. It's a symptom. It signals an unresolved emotional need or wound that's seeking acknowledgement. The avoidance nervous system is caught between fear and hope, fear of closeness and vulnerability, and hope that this connection might finally feel safe and nurturing. The fixation points to the tension between these opposing forces. Often, avoidants have spent years, or even decades, trying to suppress or ignore their deeper emotional needs because those needs felt dangerous or overwhelming in their past. When an emotionally available partner enters the picture, it awakens those buried feelings and memories. The avoidant is drawn to that partner because they represent the safety and acceptance they never fully experienced before. But because the old patterns of fear and protection are still strong, this awakening creates inner turmoil. This turmoil leads to the push-pull cycle, the emotional seesaw where they oscillate between longing and retreat. The fixation is part of this process. It's the mind and heart trying to hold on to hope, even when the avoidant is scared to actually engage fully. It's their way of staying connected at a distance, of maintaining a possibility for love without risking full vulnerability. For fixation to transform from a painful cycle into a catalyst for healing, the avoidant must first recognize what the fixation means. They need to see it not as a weakness or failure, but as a sign that something inside them wants to change. This recognition is the first step toward breaking the cycle of avoidance. Once that awareness is present, real work begins. Avoidants have to confront the fears beneath their avoidance, the fear of being overwhelmed, rejected, or losing themselves in love. They must learn to tolerate discomfort, to sit with vulnerability without pulling away. This is incredibly hard because it means rewriting old survival strategies that once protected them but now keep them stuck. The emotionally available partner plays a crucial role here, not as a rescuer, but as a steady presence who models consistent, reliable love. Their patience and calm can provide a safe container for the avoidant to experiment with new ways of being in connection. But even then, change only happens when the avoidant chooses it for themselves. The fixation is not enough. So fixation is a powerful signal, because it shows there is something worth fighting for beneath the fear. It reveals an internal yearning for connection and healing that hasn't yet found a healthy outlet. The avoidance challenge is to move beyond fixation as mere obsession and toward fixation as motivation. A motivation to face their fears, to open their hearts, and to step into a new kind of relationship. This process takes courage. It requires honesty and vulnerability. But the payoff is immense, the possibility of a love that doesn't trigger defense but invites growth. A love that's steady, nurturing, and real. Fixation, when understood and worked through, can become the doorway out of avoidance and into true intimacy. Healing in relationships where avoidant attachment is present begins when both partners take genuine ownership of their roles. Not in a blame game, but in a commitment to growth, self-awareness, and mutual understanding. It's tempting to want to point fingers to say, "You're the avoidant," or "You're the emotionally available one," as if that division neatly explains everything. But real transformation happens when both people recognize that their emotional patterns are interconnected, like two sides of the same coin, influencing and responding to each other constantly. For the avoidant partner, taking ownership means acknowledging the fears and defenses that drive their distancing behaviors. It means becoming curious about why closeness feels threatening, rather than just shutting down or escaping. This requires deep self-reflection and often a willingness to face uncomfortable feelings that have been buried for years. Avoidants may have spent much of their lives protecting themselves from vulnerability, but healing asks them to gently lower their guard. Not all at once, but in steps. It's about learning to stay present even when anxiety spikes and choosing connection over retreat. At the same time, the emotionally available partner also has to take ownership, not by trying to fix or rescue, but by recognizing their own triggers, boundaries, and needs. They need to be honest about what they can tolerate and what they cannot. Sometimes, emotionally available partners can fall into patterns of caretaking or extending themselves to keep the avoidant close. While this comes from a good place, it can unintentionally reinforce the avoidant's fears and avoidance, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Taking ownership means being aware of these dynamics and choosing to act with both compassion and firmness, balancing care with self-respect. Communication is the cornerstone of this ownership. Both partners must develop the courage to speak openly about their experiences, fears, and needs without judgment or blame. This means creating a space where vulnerability is safe, where I feel statements replace accusations, and where listening happens without rushing to fix or defend. When both people feel heard and seen, it creates a foundation of trust that makes the inevitable discomfort of growth bearable. Taking ownership also means embracing discomfort as part of the healing process. Avoidants and their partners alike have to resist the urge to run from difficult emotions or situations. Instead, they learn to stay present with uncertainty, frustration, and even conflict, understanding that these moments are often where transformation begins. It's not about perfection or getting it right every time. It's about commitment to the process. This mutual ownership transforms the relationship from a battleground of push and pull into a partnership of growth. The avoidant feels safer to open up because their partner doesn't retreat or react with frustration. The emotionally available partner feels respected and valued because their boundaries are honored and communication is honest. Together, they create a new emotional rhythm, one where closeness and autonomy coexist rather than compete. Ultimately, this shared responsibility requires patience and persistence. Healing avoidant attachment patterns isn't quick or easy. It involves rewiring deeply ingrained habits, sometimes with setbacks along the way. But with both partners engaged, willing to look inward and support each other, the relationship becomes a powerful context for change. In this space, avoidants can learn to trust that closeness doesn't mean losing themselves, and emotionally available partners can learn that love isn't about fixing or rescuing, but about presence and respect. The cycle of avoidance softens, replaced by a dance of connection where both people are free to be themselves and grow together. This is the essence of healing. When two people take ownership not only of their own emotional world, but also of the shared journey toward true intimacy.